Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Spotlight. Today we have a new guest, Armaan Gupta, who is kind of a wearer of all hats. I'm coming to realize he does the hackathon. He's president of Turning Point USA. He has his own website where he manages medias. But Armaan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and what are some of the important things that guests should know about you?
Sure. So I am a management information systems major, which is probably the least interesting part about me. I run a business called Creative Horizon. I run two different things, but one of them is Creative Horizon, where we're trying to run hackathons. We do on-campus workshops, trying to give folks the tools to go build something cool. Just because I think there needs to be more cool things in the world. I also am president of Turning Point USA. This is my second term as president, and I also started something new, which isn't
Wow,
on the
shocking.
isn't on the topic sheet, but we have a little new startup with a few buddies of mine. It's called Creative DocuVet, where we're turning appointments between veterinarians and patients. Or the owners of the patient. Obviously, the patient isn't talking. But we're taking those appointments and turning those into medical records that are copy and pasteable. I don't know if you know much about the way veterinarians do business, but most of them are small clinics, and they get billed, I don't know if you know this, $200 to $300 an hour. Could you imagine getting paid $200 for your time?
That'd be so sick.
That'd be amazing, right?
It's the dream.
Now imagine if you're spending that $200 per hour time writing medical records, just jotting down what you talked about. How boring is that? And so we're building something to take that away so that folks in the veterinarian industry can go back to doing what's important for them. So a few different things.
Yeah. Wow. Well, so when you're talking about that veterinarian business with your creative cloud, that's kind of like, or your creative website, that's kind of like a way to work with entrepreneurs who are building their own thing, or people who are making their websites. Is this just a person that you're working with that's doing that, or is this your own side thing that you're just like working on unrelated to?
Dude, that's a great observation. And so I'll give a little background.
Yeah.
So in 2018, I started a business called Creative with a K, not with a C.
Yeah. Because we're cool.
Because we're cool and we're weird. And the idea, it's essentially supposed to be kind of like a holding company, a conglomerate, do whatever I want. I don't know about you. It seems like you probably also have many interests. You're not just, you had a longboard, so, all right. I have a longboard too, so
nice.
I could see the similarities.
Match made in heaven for sure.
Yeah. And what I'm noticing is that, especially with myself, I got a lot of interests, and I don't want to box myself into one thing. So I started this company called Kreative, where we were just going to invest, and when I say we, I really mean me, myself, and I. We're going to invest our time into different things and pursue different interests as those opportunities come up. And so one of those things is Creative Dreamflow, which is a website design and development business where I help small to medium-sized companies look good online. And ironically, that was the business that led me to DocuVet. There was a client I worked with out in Maxwell, Iowa. They referred me out to a nice lady. Her name's Roseanne. Roseanne and I are now business partners, which is pretty sick. But she runs a equine veterinarian practice out in Huxley, Iowa. And she was coming to me and talking to me about this issue. We talked about all sorts of different issues. It's hard to hire people to go work in a veterinarian clinic. The talent's apparently unmotivated in Iowa, which is not a great look. And she doesn't have enough time to do all the things that she needs to do. She showed me some current solutions on the market, like what she's trying to use and how they're not kind of all the way there. And that's when and it took me 2 months. It took her basically 2 months of convincing me, like, hey, you should work on this. Like, this might actually be like fruitful. And last week we incorporated the company, and so now we're here. So yeah, it started as with a client, and now she's just a friend.
Damn, dude, that's so cool because you are opening yourself up to it's kind of like an infinite money glitch. You know, it's like, and as far as just opportunity as well, I think if you pursued this forever, you'd never run out of different things that you're working with and handling. And so what are some of the companies or things that you've worked with so far?
Yeah. Do you mean like things that I have started? Or things, or like clients I've worked with?
Clients that you've worked with.
Okay. So for Creative Dreamflow, some of the clients, most of the relationships are pretty like short term. Like I build you a website, help you with something, and move on. But I've worked with like a company out in Florida. It's an entrepreneur. She started I don't know if you've ever like had to hire a lawyer before, but they're kind of expensive. And HR, especially human resources, there's so much that goes into doing HR for one business. So, and getting a full-time like HR legal person on your company can be very expensive. So she sells like a subscription service where you can kind of basically purchase some of her time every month, and she gives you some templates and contracts that you can use. So I helped her set up her website, and she's still a client today. I host her website and do some cool stuff with her. And then I would say my coolest client has been the one out in Maxwell, Iowa. It's a farm, and I never thought like I'd like help farmers.
Yeah.
And they're super cool. Dope, like the best client I've ever had. They're super generous, great team. I love the environment. And help them build a couple websites, but also help them like automate some of the things that they're doing. So I'll give a quick example. How much do you know about farms?
A little bit.
I
worked on a farm, but it was
really
big old, like, it was Syngenta, so it's like,
okay.
Yeah. It's
not like a
number
family
two,
farm?
yeah, number 2 in the world, yeah. So
okay, that's like big farm.
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, a lot of times because you got all these acres of land, you can't just like go to like a quick trip to get gas, right? Like you have to have a gas station or a pump on your land. So this company, now this is just not like any tiny little farm. They do a lot of different things, and they have logistics. They do farm services that they sell out to other people. They've got a lot of different businesses, and so they have one pump on their land, 1 or 2. I don't know the exact number, and they have 6 different businesses purchasing like gas from that pump. So I had all these transactions, all these things that they needed to then invoice out to the correct company. So that was one of their biggest issues, and that was where I built like a little software to take all those fuel transactions and turn those into QuickBook invoices that they wouldn't have to worry about. So
this is so this is so cool because you're pursuing a bachelor in what you're doing, but you're also just like doing it. You're just like straight up like
dude, I don't know
a
class.
job. Yeah, this is class for you.
Dude,
I mean,
class is stupid.
At this point, like honestly, like the things that you're doing right now, it seems like you're just learning everything that you need to learn just from like doing the stuff on your own.
No, I'm with you, and that's why Creative Horizon. So another creative thing, right?
Yeah.
That's why that's so important to me, because I know students, even you, like even with this podcast, this is pretty dope, Like I've wanted to start a podcast for a while. I've never had the balls to do it.
It's every dude's dream, but yeah.
Right? It kind of is at this point. I want to start one, but I want to smoke cigars. While
I want to get high with Elon Musk. And
I don't know about getting high, but definitely a beer. But I think so many people just need the tools to go do things, because and also the confidence that like, hey, you don't need to be smart. And I don't mean that in like people are dumb, but more of people think they have to have this level of expertise that is so unattainable that they have to be, they have to get their bachelor's and their master's, or bachelor's and work in the industry for 5 years. And I'm like, bro, you have enough tools right now. Like, go do something. And even if you don't succeed, you'll probably learn so much about yourself and about the world that you wouldn't have learned in Marketing 367 or whatever, And I just want to try to give as many of those smart people and those self-starters the tools to go do cool stuff, and hopefully have to, not go to school, because school sucks.
Yeah, dude, that's such an aspiring thing to say. Like just in general, that's so sick. And so, you're advertising this. I guess I'd read a bit in your questionnaire thing that nobody will outwork you is something that you had said, and that like you just work really hard and just put a lot of time. Is that kind of what I'm sensing from this, or where does that come from? How did you? Where do you think that comes from in you? Just like working hard on these things, or just spending time on something that maybe other people would struggle to commit that time to?
I think it starts with finding something you actually enjoy doing, and this is a mistake I made in my life, where I would do things that I didn't find as interesting, but I thought would be fruitful. So what I mean by that is, like, oh, this will make me a lot of money, but you don't actually give a shit.
Yeah.
So like, you're just gonna. Also, can I swear?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I don't want to swear, but I don't want to like get you kicked out of the university or something stupid like that.
We're good.
But like, for example, you probably like doing this, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? Do you make money from this right now? But
No.
you still do it, right?
Absolutely.
Those are the things that you can outwork people on, right? Like, because you like it. For you, it's not even work. You just like doing it,
Yeah.
you know? That's what I've found in my life, that the things that I just genuinely like doing, if I can just do as many of those things, I'm not working, you know? And that's why I think people close to me will get like, they'll be like, you should work less. And I don't work that much. Like, my girlfriend comes on the weekends. We're long distance right now. And like, I don't work on weekends, which can be a little stressful because I have a lot to do during the week.
Yeah.
But it's okay. You know, she deserves that time. But people are like, you know, you should work less. I'm like, I'm not working. This isn't work. I enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
You know, so.
What do you think are the common criticisms to this kind of like mindset? Like, why isn't everybody thinking like this? You know what I mean? Because I feel like there's with this ideology, people hear this and their instant reaction is something that like stops them. That's like, well, no, that's stupid because of this, or like, what's the reason? What do you think is the biggest like, what's the steel man against this kind of ideology?
That's a good point.
In general, I think people are risk averse, and they look at people who I would say are successful in either the way that they think or financially successful or in the people that they've been able to reach. But you're not really accounting for the people who do this and fail. People who do this and fail really hard also. Not in a failure, well, you're going to learn when you fail no matter what. And I have the same mindset as you. I should have you know. But I'd like to think so.
I guess so.
But when people are hearing these things, like, what do you say about the people who are failing like really bad? Or what about these people who don't, whatever version of luck that exists against them, what do you have to say for the situations like that?
That's a great point, and I think it's a moot point, and I'll tell you why. So the first thing is, failure is by design. You know, in one of my first, so I was a little corny. So back in like 2018, 2019, I wrote like an employee handbook, even though I had 0 employees. So I was like, if I wrote an employee handbook, what would it look like?
That's the most alpha thing I've ever heard.
It's the stupidest. It was a waste
for
of time.
yourself.
But it was useful in the sense of like, it gave me an opportunity to somewhat think about like, what would I tell somebody if they were working for me? And so the second page, so the first page was creative, title, right? Whatever. Second page was fail fast, period. Because when you fail, then you get to, you know what's wrong and you can pivot, right? So if you're failing, then change what you're doing or give up. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I've given up on a lot of things. And I think it's, my girlfriend gets mad at me because she's like, you give up too fast. I'm like, why is that a problem? Right? If I don't like something, if I'm not going to be, you know, an NBA player, why am I still playing basketball? Like, I learned that back in high school. I'm not, this is not my life, you know, and you should be able to quit and move on. You find a job, you hate it, quit, go away, go somewhere else, go do something else. Stop like holding yourself in this position that like, this is all I can do, you know? And also failing badly. I mean, we have to define that too. What does that mean, right? Like, are you losing a ton of money? Okay, if you're losing a ton of money, then I can understand where you're like, I don't want to keep doing that. Well, good. You're losing money. Don't do it. But if it's like you're embarrassed, that might not be true. People might not actually care about what you're doing, which is often what I've learned is people are pretty into themselves to worry about how I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I just think you have to just keep trying. Like, I'm not even that successful, bro. Like, I had a conversation with Pella today for a sponsor.
College?
No. no, the window people.
Okay,
the people that make I had a conversation with Pella of like, because I was trying to get them to sponsor the hackathons. They're like, no. They're like, no, we're not doing that. Maybe next year, you know, call us back. And I'm like, all right, bro.
Yeah.
You know, that's part of the game. You're not, you know, every person you reach out to for a podcast isn't going to say yes.
Yeah. A lot of them say no.
Exactly. Is that failure? No, that's just part of the game, you know? And the sooner people realize it, the sooner you just be like, oh, cool, next.
Yeah.
So, that was a good point.
What advice do you have for riding that line between like what is trying too hard? Because you'll have the people who are hyper successful who are also saying like, I got the shit kicked out of me over and over again. I failed super hard, but I kept trying even when nobody believed in me, even when I didn't, or whatever where's that line of trying so hard and then giving up and moving to something else? How can we help navigate that line?
That's a really good question. So let's go to an even more fundamental question, which is how do we make decisions as people, right? Because that's what we're doing, right? This is just a decision we're making. So for me, when I make decisions, I kind of look at a few different factors. The first one is like instinct, right? Like what does my heart like immediately say, right? Like when you said the podcast, like I totally want to do this, right? Then what happened was I got wise counsel. So that would be my second factor. Is first, what is my first instinct? Then what do people I trust say, right? So if your mom and your dad and your girlfriend and your, ex-girlfriend all say like, quit this, like you're not going to be an NBA star, like then maybe you should quit. Yeah. Like, I've had like freshman year. So I came in as computer science and then I realized I'm stupid at math. That's what I gave up on. I gave up on math. I'm not doing this. I told my mom, because I was super big into politics at that time. I'm like not as much anymore. And I was like, Mom, I'm going to be a political science major. And she's like, no. And I was like, but I want to, And my mom, being wise counsel, though I didn't agree with that statement maybe at that age, I'm so happy I listened to her because I was like, my gut instinct is, not always right. So we got to, okay, so what's the next factor? Wise counsel. What do people around us say? In this situation, my girlfriend was like, oh, he hit me up. And I was like, really? Okay, why didn't you do it? And that was when I told you about the questionnaire. Yep. I took her opinion and I don't agree with it. And even she's kind of like, she actually told me today, she kind of felt bad that she did like sit down with you.
Hey bro, send me an email.
Yeah. Well, she's like 3 hours away now.
Hey, she'll make it. Once this blows up, it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it.
And then I would say the third thing is research. You got to go investigate what decisions to make. Like what are you going to just pick a stock and just put money in it? No, you got to do some research, right? What's your gut instinct? Oh, I've seen, for me, like when I did have like a few stocks purchased, well, not a lot, like $50 worth of stocks, I picked the ones I knew. Yeah. I'm like, I know Coca-Cola.
Yeah, Apple, put it in.
Yeah, let's do that one, But then I did some research. I was like, oh, what companies will probably be big? And then that's where I put like money in Zoom and Slack. And they did well because, the government shut us down. And everyone had to go remote. So. So I would say those are the three decisions. So then let's go back to what you asked. You said, okay, what's the line between quitting and continue trying? So it's first your instinct. What do you want to do, right? Like, why do you feel like quitting? Maybe not, right? But we can't trust that. Then I would say wise counsel. Talk to people around you. That's the thing I think people just make the biggest mistake on is they don't talk to smarter people. They think they're smart. Yeah. They're not. I'm stupid. You're stupid. Yeah. We got to talk to each other. Maybe we'll come to a pretty decent conclusion. One of the biggest blessings in my life was in high school. I was reading an article, How to Be Successful in Business, right?
Great.
And like the second thing it said was find a mentor. Now, I don't know how much do you know about like all those fake gurus that like tell you to buy courses and crap like that?
I don't know. Are you talking about like the super red pill like?
Some of those too.
Yeah, some of those too. Like okay, yeah.
Because I bring that up because do you watch CoffeeZilla on YouTube?
I've heard of him, but he breaks down like
the fake gurus.
Yeah.
So I don't want to sound like because in all of them they always try to sell you that mentor crap. Right? Yeah, like you need a mentor, so pay me $10,000. That's not a mentor. No, that's like prostitute basically.
Yeah, mental. Yeah.
A mental
a mental prostitute.
But like I was like, it said find a mentor. I was like, how do I do that? And there's this amazing organization called SCORE. It's a nonprofit. It's funded by the Small Business Administration. They connect like business veterans with like people like me and you. And it was amazing. And I met a guy. His name was Bruce Marino. Sadly, he passed away to cancer. But he was one of the most important people in my life because that guy was a mentor. He was a bread salesman, but knew a lot about business. Actually helped fund my first hackathon. So he gave me a donation to make that happen. But that relationship was so fruitful because I had a sounding board. I was like, hey, what do you think of this? That's stupid. Okay, great. What do you think about this? Oh, that makes more sense. He would reprimand me too. Like there was this one meeting where he asked me to present something. It was freaking terrible. And he got mad at me. I was like, wow, I've never seen Bruce mad at me. But you need those people. And that comes in the form of parents, mentors, hell, even professors. You know, like if there's someone you find a good relationship with, ask them questions. Because you sitting in your room just looking at the world outside and being like, I wonder what I should do. It's like, what are you going to get from that, you know? So you got to go talk to people and find people that you trust, that have expertise in some area that you can go and ask a question to. This school is really good at that. The John Papa John Center, they've got amazing people like Judy and Megan, Jean. All of them are just so amazing. You can just go and talk to them. And they're like really smart, like way smarter than you and I.
Yeah.
And you could just go ask them questions like, "Hey, what do you think of this business?" You know, and they'll help you. Like, that's free.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that donation from like a free service that you did is so sick. I mean, that's just perfect.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, I go talk to people. I would say that's how you figure it out, because there's a good chance, like, if you have a business that isn't working or an idea that isn't working, and everyone around you says this is probably not a good idea, and your research isn't giving you anything good, and your instinct, usually our instinct is often misleading, but at that point you probably shouldn't do what you're doing, you know.
Yeah, and I think with the wise counsel, I think what turns most people off from that is it's so difficult to receive criticism. Like, just inherently how it is, it's just hard to have someone look at you and be like, this isn't it, dude, and having to change that. There are so many, like, coping things that you'll do in your head of, like, oh, well, you know, they don't know. You know, they don't understand or whatever excuse you're going to use. And I think it's one of the biggest barriers of having this conversation with people is, like, getting out of their head, like, no, you aren't the smartest person. Like, you don't know the most, and you shouldn't know the most.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Give that time. I think one of the quotes was, if you're the smartest person in the room, find a different room.
Yeah.
You know, and it's because it's always like, okay, you need to surround yourself with people that you want to be like, because if you're constantly like bringing up the bearings of the people around you, that's just holding you down. And I think a lot of people look at that and they think that they're sacrificing some sort of friendship or personality for like business or growth. But I think that those things are not mutually exclusive. You can have both things at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, those relationships that you're building with those mentors are good relationships. Like, those are sociable relationships.
They're amazing. You know, and even people, I'll give a quick example. So I have a good friend of mine. I would say one of my closest friends. His name is Philip. I don't know if you know Philip. He would be someone you got to interview.
Send me the email, man.
Dude, hold on. Let me write that down. Because Philip's a crazy guy. He's going to be more interesting than me.
We'll see.
Philip for podcast thing. Okay.
Yeah.
And Philip and I met in SciStarters, which was it's like a accelerator program here on campus. And like, I don't think we became friends really until after that program. You know, like, even in the program, I don't think we talked unless it was like required to.
Yeah.
And now we're like really good friends. And not only can I like trust him, rely on him, but he also gives me, like, every time I talk to him, I leave with something useful and I've gained something, and he hopefully leaves with something as well. And those are friendships that have blossomed out of business, because I don't know why, but it works that way, you know? It's weird. Like, the people that I work with and then become friends with are the ones that I really become friends with. And it's just wild how that works, you know? When you work with people, for some reason, and as long as you're somewhat, you know, compatible, those become really good friendships, especially with mentors too. And it's crazy. In SciStarters, there's a couple. They have a really dope business. The couple is Cole and Cameron. Right? I got breakfast with Cole tomorrow.
Nice.
So hopefully he doesn't hear this.
Shout out to Cole.
Shout out to Cole. But first of all, I got like invited to their wedding, right? Like, I was in their wedding party, which is sick, right? Yeah. And that was from a business thing that became a friendship. But also Judy and Megan from the SciStars program went to their wedding, right? Like, they didn't need to, but they were friends, and they became friends from the business stuff and from being mentors. And because if someone's mentoring you, like, they probably really like care for you and like you and like want to see you succeed. And if they're a good person, they probably want to see you succeed in all areas of your life, not just in, making money or whatever.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, they want to see you successful as a student, as a human, as a friend, So you're right. It's not mutually exclusive at all.
Yeah, and I think maybe you could get down this weird area because I think with all mentalities, there is an extreme that's like so far gone to where you start to kind of dehumanize people and see them as like this net profit type, like, okay, how can they benefit me or whatever?
It's terrible.
And you can go far, but I don't want people to hear what you're saying and assume that it's like that.
No,
like,
it's not.
At least wait until that's revealed in your character if you're actually like that. But I doubt you are, and I doubt most people are as well. But people hear that and they instantly are like,
No, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think for me the way I look at things is how can you serve them? So instead of trying to think how can you always be served, try to serve those people. Like, I think that's the easiest way to, remove that nature out of you, if that is your nature, which hopefully it isn't. But it also creates, like, trust between two people. Like, for example, I think right now you're serving me, right? Like, it's a cool opportunity. So hopefully I get to pay you back in some opportunity, right? Just because of, that's how relationships are, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I kept taking from you, you'd be like, this Armaan guy kind of sucks, So if I'm hoping that I can serve those people too. So that mentor-mentee relationship or that friendship or that starts as whatever type of business relationship shouldn't just be one-sided. If it is, then it probably won't last that long anyways. So the way you combat what you're saying is you give back, you serve, as much as you can, and don't look at it as just a way to like get something for yourself.
Yeah, damn. God, I love that. I've been using the word serve. It was a bigger thing in the first season of what I'd end up doing is how does what you think or what you do serve you? Like, how does it benefit you to feel the way that you do? How does it benefit you to do the things that you do? Because I think most people, especially when it comes into politics, and I'm probably going to ask you that question when we get into that later, but a lot of people when they're thinking, they're so sad or angry all the time. And it's because of whatever political thing. And it's like, but how is that serving you right now? If it's doing nothing but hurting you, I don't understand. But I love that concept of like, how can I serve you? Because we're all NPCs in each other's lives. You know, that's just like the fact of it. And so it's like, how can I be, how can I be this like treasure chest that offers you something good? Because in your life, that's all I am. You know what I mean? Just in the breadth of it. You don't have to look at it that way, but all I can do is offer you things, and I think that's a wonderful way to view things.
Do you believe in Jesus?
That's a complicated question.
Doesn't have to be.
True. I'd say
you don't have to go down a philosophical rabbit hole.
No, not gonna. I'd say in the way that you want me to. Yes.
What does that mean?
Yes, I'd say so. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. I don't want you to do anything, but whatever is true to you.
In the way that I feel like this might be going. Generally, I think that I agree with everything that the Bible says, but I think that that's separate from whether or not it actually happened.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So generally, I'm skeptical on whether or not it happened. That doesn't mean that I don't believe that it did, but it's up in the air. But I believe the teachings of everything that's in it.
Okay. So from what I'm getting, and before I make my point, because I'm not trying to derail your conversation.
No, dude, have at it, yeah.
You believe in the principles and probably what it teaches, but not in the why it should be used. Right?
Necessary. You can take everything that the Bible says as a metaphorical message of a prescription of how you should live your life.
It could, but then it'd lose its value. Because then it's just subjective.
So.
Oh, it totally would. Yeah.
It depends on what you get the value from.
Well, if you're using it because you believe in it from I think these are good ways of living. I think these are good ways. I think. I believe it. Then tomorrow I don't believe it because tomorrow, I get a girlfriend or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but now if you say, no, this is actually true and there's a reason why it's true, then whether I think it is or isn't, it becomes true.
Yeah, I guess I believe that it's true.
Okay.
So that's probably a more decisive way of saying
well,
it. Yeah.
We'll totally have a different conversation on that because I love talking religion.
But, I do too, yeah.
So the reason I bring that up is because I look at Jesus as a pretty dope leader, right? And even Jesus said in, I think it's Mark 10:45. He says, "For even the Son of Man did not come down to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many." Right? Now, if we believe it is true, then that's pretty incredible to think that God came down and, sacrificed his own life, God,
Yeah.
for us. When in every other religion, at least, because I didn't grow up as a Christian, I grew up as a Hindu.
Oh.
And so I can see like the opposite of what that looks like, where we're serving God all the time. And then when we see, okay, even God, if even God can humble himself, if God, the creator of all things upon which all things are sustained, can humble himself for you and me, then maybe I could humble myself for you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think once you stop looking at life as this, like, what can I get? How does it serve me? What makes me happy? And you start saying, how can I serve others? And if everyone did that, dude, this world would be amazing. This would be the best place ever to live, And it also, life just becomes more fun. Like when I ran, so I'll give you a quick story about Creative Horizon because I think it ties into this point. Sorry.
Monster. The monster.
Dude, I don't want to do it in the mic. But. All right, so I ran a hackathon. So I went to my first hackathon in 2019. It was called Windy City Hacks. It was really dope. It was for high schoolers. I won Best Design Product, and I also fell in love with this hackathon crap. I was like, this is really cool. I want to do this for a long, long, long time. So I ran my first one in 2019. So following that year for high school and college students in the Chicago area. We had about 75 folks. It was really cool. And then we were planning to do 4 more, 2 in San Francisco, 1 in Chicago, and 1 in New York. And that was 2020. And so COVID happened. Destroyed my dreams, literally. Actually stopped my dreams from happening, which kind of suck. And I paused and I came to college. That's when I started the website design stuff because I literally had nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Because I got school stopped and the business stopped, so I had nothing to do.
Yeah.
And so I started that, and for a long time I was acting like I think most people, where it's I was creating these barriers to why I can't start running hackathons again. I was thinking to myself oh, it's not the right time, or there's restrictions, and there were for a while, and then eventually they got lifted. But I was still in that mindset of I can't do this right now. I have to wait. And through some pretty wise counsel, a lot of people in my life that were, I would say, either smart or close to me or both, said you should just do it. And I was like, no, I can't, because I don't even know. I don't even know why I was saying that, but I was. And I had this misconception that because my first event was 75 students, that the second one must be better than 75, right? And that was stupid because that misses the complete point. The point isn't serving myself of oh, look at me, I'm so good, I got 80 people. Mm-hmm. But it's rather, I need to serve students, whoever it may be, whether it's 10 people, it's going to be a great hackathon for 10 people. Mm-hmm. We're going to make it a dope event. Or it's 100 people, it's going to be a dope event. Whatever we do, as long as we're focusing on giving those students a great time, we win, which is awesome because then it doesn't matter how many people come in. And so I decided to run one. I was shooting for 15. I was like, if I can get 15 people, that would be awesome. And I ended up, by the grace of God, getting 54 people, and it was awesome. And after that, we decided to run a bunch more. But that was, I really believe God blessed me in that season because my heart was set on serving people. My heart was not set on I didn't even raise money for that event. I didn't ask anybody for sponsorships. I had a meeting with the dean of the business college, and I asked him to be a judge. And then we ended up talking a little bit about sponsorships, and he ended up sponsoring the event, which was an awesome, a blessing, that saved me $500. But I even sensed this in myself this semester of I'm focusing a little bit too much on the vanity of it, of mm-hmm. And now it's because now the money that I'm receiving from sponsors has a number behind it, right? 140 students, 50 students. Now I have these. Because of the money that I took, my heart is not completely dead set on servitude. Now it's serving people, but also making sure my sponsors are happy and making sure that there's content going out, whatever the heck. And that's important because it allows us to be a sustainable operation and keep building and doing cool things. But it also sucks because it's not as fun. It's a lot more fun to just focus on having a great time with a bunch of cool, code junkies than it is to focus on making sure you're hitting your numbers. That's so boring, So as long as we focus on serving people and doing our best to give to each other, you will never be without stuff. I'll put it that way,
What do you do to kind of ward against slipping like that? Like, what's your accountability? Is it the kind of that counsel, or how are you catching yourself when you're kind of figuring out that you're not serving people as much anymore?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I necessarily have any sort of like system. I will say being accountable to God helps, right? Like knowing, okay, like let's not forget what you did for me. Like, all right, like okay, like let me not make this about the money. But also just doing a really good job at marketing the events. Because as long as I can market them well, people will come and I'll never have to worry about the numbers. But also I think making sure that we're always talking to students after the event and making sure we're like sitting down with people. Like I have the amazing pleasure, dude. Like the way you get to, meet cool people with this podcast, minus me,
No way, dude.
I get the privilege and the blessing to get to meet with these amazing students who are so smart because I just went to this event and I'm like, hey, I want to know more about your experience. And making sure that I'm sitting down with people, buying them coffee, talking to them, getting their feedback, I think I'm still serving them. Because as long as I'm hearing what they have to say and implementing that, then I'm still making it about them and not about me. And trying my absolute hardest to make, and I haven't had this problem with any sponsor or anybody that I work with right now, but making sure the events are always focused on students first, then, the money. So like no sponsor gets to like tell anybody what to do, which again, I'm blessed with pretty dope people that I work with. So that's not a problem, but for other organizers, that becomes an issue where like the sponsors like make it too not fun,
Yeah.
And they want stuff out of these students. It's like, bro, they're students. Like, calm down.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask what is the importance of that stuff, because there are still trackable and important facets of like running a business or running an event, and like sponsors is one of those. But I liked your wording of like, this is an unfortunate thing that I do need, but it's a struggle to like still remember to focus on the people when you have those numbers next to you.
I would say it's not unfortunate to like need to build a sustainable business. I think I'll put it this way, because in the event that any sponsor does hear this, I don't want them to think, and I mean this from my heart, like I don't want anybody to think that working with these businesses sucks. It's not. It's amazing, because they give the students resources, right? Like they give them employment opportunities. They give them stickers, and swag and cool stuff. They give them the ability for these events to happen. So, what I think is unfortunate is as an operator, having to sometimes sometimes forgetting about the people and looking at the number and like how many people are signed up, Whereas before I was like, whoa, 10 people signed up? Like that's awesome, And now it's like, damn, I'm only at 120.
It's the difference in perspective.
Yeah,
crazy.
It is. But I think you can't escape that with anything. I mean, you can always, I guess you can quit, but but you can't, it's part of doing business. And the way that I've always said this is like, my goal is to build something sustainable with everything I do, because if I like it, I want to be able to do it forever. And to make it sustainable means that you got to cover your expenses and your own personal expenses. I don't know if sometimes people forget that a business doesn't just like, whatever you make with the business isn't like yours, it's the business's. And then if you're lucky enough, you get to pay yourself after making a decent amount of money with the business. But yeah, it's I have to build it, make it sustainable. I want to make it sustainable, so I have to also care about numbers and things and all that good stuff. But at the heart, I'm hoping that as we grow, because we are, as we grow, that we can keep the students first and keep the people that we actually serve. And here's another thing to remember. The sponsors are also people we serve. The sponsors aren't like this like
entity of
they're also like, I'm also working hard on like, hey, what did you think about the event? Like, how did you get value out of it? Like, what are you doing? Because what do you want to do? Or I always talk to the judges, especially What did you think about the projects? What could we do differently? And sometimes it's like, it does get annoying. I know at the at the Hack Iowa State version 2, dude, I was so tired. I was so tired, and I had a couple of judges that were a little harder to work with that Sunday morning. I was so angry. That was when I couldn't take the criticism. I was like, oh my gosh, like you don't know what I've been through. But I got to remember, it's their feedback, and you should respect it. But everybody, all stakeholders in this event, right? The judges, the students, the sponsors, those are all people that we and myself and my anybody who volunteers and our business serves. And so we have to treat them all equally. But if I had to make a pyramid, it goes students first, then sponsors, and then anybody else.
Yeah. And I think that's a good pyramid. I wanted to kind of pivot to this religious journey that you've had, that kind of, it seems like a lot of your ideas and a lot of these philosophies are rooted probably at a deeper level down into Christianity.
I would hope so.
Yeah, that's kind of the point.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. And so walk me through that journey. How did you switch over from, was it Hinduism?
Yeah.
Yeah, how did you switch over from Hinduism to Christianity? What did that look like?
My testimony. All right. Well, it's kind of it was a journey, I'd say. So I grew up Hindu, but I wasn't like I did all the stuff that a Hindu would do, that at least in my family, but I wouldn't say that I believed in God. In high school, I didn't believe in God, so much so that my mom kicked me out of the house one time because I argued with her. So I was a pretty staunch atheist. I actually have my first Bible I bought when I was in Boy Scouts, and I have notes on it that's like, why can't God talk to everyone? Why is he only talking to Moses? And now I'm reading that like, bro, you just need to keep reading.
Yeah.
You just need to keep reading a little bit more. But so I was pretty much against the idea of God. And I think I questioned it mainly and I questioned it because of Hinduism. So I'll give a quick example. So and this happened in both pagan religions and, well, I guess everything non-Christian becomes pagan. But let's say Greco-Roman paganism and, at least from what I know, Hinduism and sometimes Buddhism too, which is like you will sacrifice stuff to an idol, right? Like, so you'll give food or like raisins or milk or whatever to an idol. And that, in the way they're thinking is the God behind that idol or in that idol or around it or somewhere in, I don't know, is blessing that food. And so I sat there as like a little, wee little lad. I'm like, bro, why does this God need my food? like, why does he need my food? Like, he's God, right?
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't he be able to sustain himself? And so that picture of who God was really, I would say, kind of ruined who God really actually is for me. So then I came to college, and this was my freshman year, and I joined Turning Point USA. It was like my first club, and I got to hang out around a lot of, more Christian folks. And I would say that my observation was that they were pretty happy people. It's really weird because I was not a happy person. I wasn't. And so I went to this conference. The Turning Point had a conference. It's called what was it called? Student Action Summit. It's pretty cool. Went to this. It was in Florida. And this first semester, dude, was the weirdest semester of my life. I would say this is the most like dope semester I ever had. So I came to college, joined Turning Point. We built our club. I was one of the campus coordinators. We went from 5 people to 400 people signed up in that semester. I got invited to go to Mar-a-Lago for Turning Point because of the work that I was able to do here at Iowa State. So I'm going to Mar-a-Lago. This is the first semester I got to college. Yeah. Right? I'm trying to fit into some tux and figure that all out. And then at the same time, I become a door-to-door salesman.
What?
Dude, so I was walking down Welch. There was a barber there. He sold his business, but there was a barber there. And right across, no, actually it was right next to it, there was a sign from Aptiv. If anybody who's listening knows, it's they do door-to-door sales, and they're a pest control company. So it was for Aptiv. It said commission-only salesperson, message this. And I was like, and I knew at that point, and I don't know how I completely knew this, but I knew that if I wanted to become really good at sales, I need to work on commission.
Yeah.
Because because that's when you get your teeth kicked in.
Yeah, no better motivator.
And I wanted to go door to door. I don't want to do it ever again, but I wanted to at that point. So I called them. I end up, they never get back to me, which is weird. So I'm like, I'm reaching
Ironic.
out. Like, I want to work for you for free pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, give me a job. And then one day oh my gosh. So I tried pitching Ben Singh. Do you know who Ben Singh is?
I feel like I've heard that name.
Oh, you definitely have.
Yeah.
Yeah, he runs AJ's and B&C.
Yeah, okay.
And AJ's Liquor. So I was like, I really want to. This guy had a terrible website. I still think it's pretty shit. And I was like,
on record.
I'll be honest, you know.
Amen. Criticism.
I was like, I want to make this guy's website better. And in my mind, I was thinking, you know, the way I'm gonna sell him is like, I don't know if you know this, but they have like this like card that you can get like VIP every time you go to like AJ's or something.
Okay.
And I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna build him a website instead of taking money. I'll just take that card.
Nice.
I was like, that'd be pretty cool,
Yeah,
right?
it's the trade.
So this is all first semester. So I pitched Ben Singh, and he's like, come back in a couple months or whatever. And we had a date schedule. Ironically, he never showed up to that meeting. And I drove up all the way from Illinois, and he's like, yeah, I'm like in Michigan. I'm like, great. So that didn't work out. But I was walking out of BNC, going down the street back to Friley, and there was somebody sitting in that office. And I was like, okay, they didn't call me back. I walk in. His name's Nick Heffling. He's a friend of mine now. And I ended up getting the job, which for anybody listening, it's not that hard to get a commission-only sales job. It's like extremely easy. And I find it so funny. They're always at the career fair, and everyone's like, stay away. Yeah, door-to-door is not fun. It's important to do for like a month, but you know. Anyway, so I get that job, and super crazy semester, and it all kind of, in my head, the way I'm thinking about everything is like, damn, like everything seems to connect together. And I used to believe in coincidences before that semester. I really believed that like things just happened, like there didn't have to be a rhyme or a reason. And then oh gosh, that winter break, I go to this student action summit, and then I also decide I'm gonna run for mayor of Ames, which is the dumbest thing.
What?
I know. I know.
What? Okay, go ahead.
And I was like, I'm gonna do this because I'm stupid.
Are you even old enough to run for?
Yeah, 18, baby.
You could have a fresh out of high school.
I know.
It would have been mayor.
Dude, it would have been the dumbest thing ever.
That's my next thing.
Well, the reason I even thought that'd be somewhat ascertained or somewhat attainable was there's a state rep. He's a little goofy now, and I don't really totally like. Oh, he's a client of mine too, so I can't say too much. But there's a state rep. He started an organization. I won't name it. That helps support young conservatives running for office. It's a great organization. They actually do good work. And so he just started it, and I don't remember how, but I got in touch with him. And so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna run for mayor. And I was like, well, this is what we're gonna do. And so then in that winter break, I went to Mar-a-Lago. We went to SAS. Started door-to-door sales, and then also like semi-launched this like mayoral campaign. I ended up realizing the mayor was actually a really good conservative. John Hala, he's still in office. He's pretty decent. I don't know if I agree with him anymore, but he's a pretty cool guy. And so then I'm like, I'm gonna run for a seat on the city council. And there are a few people I genuinely feel that I don't think are doing the best job on our city council. Though I also will say that most of the city council as a whole, I think does a fantastic job running Ames. Either way, I was stupid. I eventually learned that I was a little cocky in like thinking I should run.
It's kind of a big deal.
Well, do you know who Rachel Junk is? She ran when she was 19, and she's on the city council. She's running again.
That's insane.
Or she either is running again or re-election, and she. I don't know what your political breakdown of your audience is, but she's hard left, right? Like super liberal. I'm not a liberal at all, and I don't want to be. And so I was like, bro, she could get it. Like I could totally get it. Yeah. So I wasn't like completely like
out of left field,
yeah,
right field, but
I was really surprised, and I was talking to. And I know I'm getting a little on a tangent. I'll come back to the main religious point, but I want to highlight this. So. After that winter break, that state rep and that organization connected me with Tim Garton. He's a professor here at Iowa State and also a city council member. Really good guy. He told me, I met him at Cafe Diem. Dude straight up said, "You're arrogant." And I'm like, yeah, probably. And he told me, like, you should, like, you're dumb. Like, don't run for office. You don't know anything. And he was right. And he told me to do something, and I recommend anybody who's thinking of ever running for office. It's called a listening tour. Basically what it is you literally go and talk to as many people, but you don't talk. You just listen. You ask them, like, what I'm running for this, or I'm thinking of running. I want to know what you think. And he told me to do this. I got to meet some pretty cool people in the community, folks that have helped other city councilors run, the Chamber of Commerce president, all the other city council members. After talking and listening, I realized, I don't think I could do anything effective. Because the issue that I was running on, which was like, I want to invest in startups and like give people give a better business environment. Turns out Ames has a pretty decent business environment. Yeah. And that's a good thing, right? So I was like, okay, don't need to run. Either way, so all this stuff was happening in winter. I realized, all right, coincidence don't exist. And I said something to a guy. And so in this little like city council race, I met this kid. His name was Darren Dersham. He was out in Pennsylvania. I met him at SAS completely by chance. And he was he knocked a lot of doors for political campaigns. So he was a smart kid. He was a Christian, but I didn't really care at that point. And he was going to be my field director. That was our goal. I was like, all right, like I'm running this campaign. Like I would like you to help me, And so we had some conversations, and I eventually went to Albuquerque, New Mexico for the door knocking stuff. And we still had phone calls talking about this campaign. And I told him something. I was like, hey, it feels like everything I want to do doesn't happen, and it just happens the way it wants to happen. And he said, and he quoted Proverbs 16:9, which says, "A man's heart sets his path, but God leads the way." And I was like, bro, damn, that makes so much sense. Because that's true. That's how I felt. I felt like I had so many plans. And this is part of the whole failing thing. Is like, I thought this is going to work. This is going to work. This is what I'm going to do. This is who I'm going to be. I'm going to be a city councilor. And then I'm like, no, I'm not. It turns out that what we want often doesn't happen, right? And so then, logically, the way I started thinking is like, then maybe I don't control things. Like maybe I'm not the guy at the steering wheel. Maybe somebody else is controlling it. And then I thought, maybe I should know who that guy is. If somebody else is running this universe and it's not me, then maybe I should know who that is and see what he thinks about what I'm doing, And it took me 2 years. I went to church, but I didn't really go to church, if that makes sense. Whenever I woke up,
social
whenever I wasn't hungover is when I'd go. I tried volunteering. I did for a little bit volunteering at Harvest as a way to force myself to go. I gotta go. I'm volunteering, And I, again, never took it seriously. Joined a fraternity. I would say I don't think my behavior was what I behave like now, in not good ways. And then I met my now girlfriend. Her name's Georgie.
Shout out Georgie.
She's pretty cool. She's pretty hot too.
Nice.
Amen. It's all good stuff. All good stuff. Just because I think she's gonna listen to this. So
we need the Georgie shout out.
Yeah. No, and so she really encouraged me to actually look into what I believe. Nobody ever did that before, where she was like, hey, if you believe in this God stuff, you got to really believe it. She's a pretty strong Christian too. So I decided to actually dive into it. And when I mean actually, I mean I read the Bible, I read the Bhagavad Gita, I read some stuff on the Quran, I read, there's not much to read on Buddhism, but I read on Buddhism.
Yeah.
And I actually because my mom, so my parents still don't take it terribly well that I'm who I am today. And that's okay. They love me still, and that's pretty awesome. Because I talk to a lot of Christians who used to be Hindus, and their families literally disowned them. Actually, get out the house. We're not paying for anything. I'm not talking to you for 10 years. And I'm blessed that my mom loves me more than she hates me being a Christian. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I'm very blessed for that. But I remember it was summer, and I told my mom, what do we believe in? Because I wanted to know, what does a Hindu actually believe in? And I'll tell you, I'm still figuring it out. It's really confusing. I can tell you exactly, precisely what they believe in, but it's very hard to pinpoint because of just the way the religion is set up. And this comes back to my point about subjective and objective thoughts and moralities and principles. Hinduism is highly subjective. It could be this way, but it could also be this way, and it could also be this way, and it could also be this way. You could have 4 Hindus in the room that disagree on everything. Isn't that the weirdest thing ever?
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to know that you can't just believe in something. There has to be a reason why it ought to be believed in. Because without that foundation of truth and like this is objective and there's a reason why we believe in this, there's no reason in believing any of it. You know? So I implore you to think about that as you go about your day. But I asked my mom, what do we believe in? And my mom, I told her, like, I'm thinking of being a Christian. She was very mad, right? Very mad. She was like, don't get baptized. I was like, why not? She's like, just don't. And she told me something, and this is the greatest thing she ever told me. She said, before you go and change your religion, why don't you figure out what our religion is? Like, why don't you go read our books? And I was like, that's a great point. Like, yeah. Why don't I? You know, why am I just jumping into this without actually doing my research? Right? Research. Instinct, yeah. Wise counsel, research. Wise counsel said, heck no.
Yeah.
Instinct said yes. Research gave me the answer. And so I read the Bible like a little bit more. I read the Gospel of John, which I probably should have when I was younger, instead of reading like Genesis and be like, this is weird.
This is boring, yeah.
Genesis does get interesting.
Yeah.
I think once you understand the story, it gets like really, really interesting. So I read the Gospel of John. I'm like, okay, this Jesus guy is pretty interesting. And I would say up until that point, like I believed that there was a God. And I said, and the way I told this guy at a party, I said, I believe there's a God. I believe that if I had to pick, it's most likely the God of the Bible. But I had no clue of Jesus. I didn't know who this guy was. And that's important to the story. So I was very afraid of reading the Bhagavad Gita because I genuinely felt this, that if I was going to read this book, I was going to be wrong. That, yeah, maybe this Bible stuff is not that interesting. And maybe everybody else is saying the same thing. Because that's the argument most people will make about religion. Or faith, or whatever you want to call it, which is it's all the same, right? It's all the same. They all tell you not to kill people. It's like, yeah, but, well, maybe not all of them. But why you shouldn't kill people? That's the important question, right? It's not like, yeah, we all know you probably shouldn't kill, probably shouldn't steal, but why? What's the underlying foundation of the faith? And when you investigate that, that's when everybody except Jesus starts cracking. Because you're realizing, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. You're saying Muhammad just went into this cave and only he talked to Angel Gabriel? Like, really? You're saying that this man who conquered and conquested and was a warmonger, you're telling me that only he knew the revelation? Okay. But then you look at Jesus, and I'll tell you something, this is crazy. In Hinduism, another practice, and I think this was probably done in a lot of religions with idols, is you clean the idol. You clean it with milk and water to really purify it before you pray to it or whatever. But Jesus cleaned us, which is the wildest thing ever. Instead of this idol being washed, he actually cleaned the feet of his disciples. God came down from his heavenly throne and said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wash your feet. The people who ended up betraying him after showing them all sorts of cool things and giving them everything that he could have. When he got crucified, they all scattered. Those are the people that he knew that they were going to do this, and he still cleaned their feet, and he still gave his life for them. That's wild. That doesn't make sense in my mind when I first read into it. And when you look at Hinduism, you look at Christianity, you're like, damn, you're saying God wants to know me? You know, in Hinduism, the actual, like, all-encompassing force is called Brahma, or Brahman. I could be wrong. One, it's either I believe it's Brahma. I could no. Gets a little confusing.
Bruh.
No. It's Brahma or Brahman. And then there's the Trimurti, and the Trimurti is your what most people know. It's Shiva, Vishnu, and then Brahman or Brahma. It's one of the one. Mm-hmm. Now, I asked my dad, I'm like, why did this all-encompassing force create these three guys? He said, because he doesn't want to deal with us. And I was like, really? And you're telling me I got to follow that guy?
Yeah.
And actually, it's not even a guy. It's an impersonal force. Think of it like the force from like Star Wars. It just is. Like it isn't. It's not personal. It doesn't have characteristics or a nature. And that's why it creates these 3 other guys so that it doesn't have to talk and deal with us. And I'm like, wait, that sucks. And then there's the God of the Bible who yearns so desperately to want to be with us that he kills himself so that we can not only be near him, but also so that he can reconcile us back to him. That's the wildest thing ever. That's the coolest thing ever. That God would humble himself, do the works that he did, because we can't do it, right? Every other religion will tell you if you pray hard enough, you fast long enough, you're nice to enough people, you say enough of this and enough of that, then maybe when you die, you will go into the nice place and have your 70 virgins or whatever, right? Jesus said, nah, bro, your righteous deeds are like filthy rags. Damn. You're saying the things that I do that I think are good, they're filthy in your eyes? Yeah. So then tell me, Jesus, what do I do? He says, nothing. He says, you can't do it. So let me help you. And for the love that I showed you, if you find that to be something lovely in your eyes, then maybe you'll trust me because I'm going to go do the first step for you. So I'm giving you a reason to trust me. That's what he's doing. And then he gave us 12 witnesses, and actually over 500 witnesses, right? He gave us some really good, and I've got a PowerPoint presentation actually to show you if you want to actually know about the evidence of why the resurrection was real. So he gave us evidence for, hey, I really am God. So if I am God, then what I tell you must be true, knowing God's nature, at least in the Jewish sense, and God's nature in, I think, most religion sense, that his nature doesn't change. His mind may, but his nature doesn't. Meaning that if God is truth and God is truthful, then he's not going to all of a sudden start lying to us, right? So we can then know that if this guy is God, then he's probably telling us the truth. Or not probably, but most likely telling us the truth. Gave us all this evidence, did the works that we can't do so that he can come back to us. Dude, full stop. That I'm with it. I'm a follow that guy. That's way more compelling. And it was the apologetics and the evidence behind the resurrection and why we can safely assume it was true. And there is a lot of evidence, especially when you compare Jesus to other historical figures, right? There are people complain, how do you know it was written so long ago? The first gospel was written within 30 years of Jesus' resurrection. 30 years! Now, you might think, well, that's a long time, Armaan. There are historical figures where the first autobiography or biography are written 200, 300 years later, and historians call that fact, or at least that it's most likely what happened, right? There is no doubt, even amongst secular historians, that Jesus was a historical figure. He was. He was a real dude. You're telling me a Jewish carpenter from Nazareth is still remembered and worshipped by over 2 billion people today? Come on, something had to have happened, right? And then you look at the other evidence, which I don't want to, bore you with that, but there's a lot. And all of that coupled into me finding my way, and I was like, okay, I think I want to, be a Christian. And then one day, it was in September of last year, so not this past September, but last year, I was going down a rabbit hole on YouTube of trying to figure out the differences, and so all of what I just said came a little bit after. But right before that, because again, you reading the Bible on your own, you might not understand every single part of it. And so it makes more sense to go, again, talk to wise counsel, go talk to people who've probably studied this thing and talk to them. So I was like, at that point in September of last year, I couldn't figure out the difference really between like Krishna, for example, which is usually what most people will compare Jesus to. And Krishna, I think, has some Jesus-like qualities and then some very un-Jesus-like qualities. I'd say the one Jesus-like quality is that he also rebelled against religious teachers. He also claimed to be the creator God. He's the avatar of Vishnu. He was the creator God. He's got some good things to say. I'd read the Bhagavad Gita. It's pretty interesting. And that morning, I had a meeting with a guy named Grayson, who's my pastor, who's my now pastor. But at that moment, he's just some dude named Grayson. And I met Grayson freshman year. This is my junior. I met him freshman year. I never talked to him except sometimes when I was tabling for Turning Point. I'd be outside the library. He'd bring his dog. I'd see him. I got his contact information freshman year. I never talked to him. Before junior year summer, I reached out to him. Hey, I want to do a Bible study with you because I wanted to know more about this whole Jesus guy. And we didn't get together at all throughout the summer. All this stuff with my parents happened, whatever. September, I'm going down this rabbit hole. I'm like literally like freaking out. You know, like I can't figure it out. That was my problem. I couldn't see why Jesus over Christian in this instant. Then that morning, I was supposed to sit down with him for an hour. We ended up talking for 4 hours. And he explained a lot of things, and it made complete sense to me. And a month later, I got baptized. And so, yeah, that was a very long-winded way of.
There was a lot of wonderful things in there, and I think the story is great. I think it's very well spoken. You told me that you had a PowerPoint about this. I don't doubt it for a second.
Well, it's not just for fun. I
imagine.
Yeah, we do like Friday night.
God,
devos.
I'd hope so.
Yeah. The ministry that I'm in is called Alpha Omega. We're very small, but we're a really good group of people. And Grayson is our church in Des Moines is part of it. And so we do these Friday night devos where we do like lessons and cool things. And he asked me to do one on like the resurrection, the evidence behind it, and so that's when I made this amazingly long PowerPoint. But yeah, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of really great stuff. I think most importantly, what I think, so you were saying like what do Hindus believe in? What do Christians believe in? You know, like not that I don't know or that I don't expect it, but what do Christians believe in?
Okay, yeah. So I would say fundamentally that we believe that there was a real person named Jesus who was God, that was on this earth for 33 years, was crucified by Pontius Pilate and instigated by Jews and Romans, mostly Jews, and died, rose after 3 days, and ascended back into heaven after revealing himself to, I believe, 500 people. And from that belief, what he taught is true, that there is now a road to heaven through him, and that by placing your faith in him, confessing that he really is Lord and Savior of all things and all people, that your sins will be forgiven, and also getting baptized. That's an important part too. And it's so critical that that be the way it is, because what that means is that if you really do believe in your heart that he is truly Lord and Savior, and that you do get baptized and you confess his name, then your sins are forgiven. And he didn't just, I thought this too when I got baptized. I was like, he forgave my sins up until that day. No, he forgave our past, present, and future sins, which is crazy, which means that you can confidently know that you are going to heaven. That's wild. Any other religion, you're guessing.
So, okay, do you think that Hinduism has proof for why they believe what they believe?
The evidence is sparse. So, Hinduism originated with the Rig Veda. Sorry, with the Rig Veda. With the Vedic texts, there's 4 books of them. The Rig Veda is the largest and most popular book. It's a book of hymns to a set of many, many deities, we'll put it that way. And from that originated the Vedic religion, that is the origin for the Hindu system of belief. But the thing is, there's so many things in Hinduism that are up to interpretation, but there's 2 things that aren't up to interpretation, at least from what I've gathered. The first one is that the law of reincarnation is true. Right, like people will reincarnate. And then the second, and probably the most fundamental, is that the law of karma is true. Now, this is where it gets a little tight, because I don't think people understand. Americans have this view of karma as what goes around comes around type of deal. It's actually a lot broader than that. So in the Hindu belief, your soul is eternal, which Christians would believe as well, that your soul is eternal. And that you have lived millions of lives, and you will live millions of lives. And that the deeds that you do can either be good or bad, and they are attached not to your body but to your soul, which means that, Elijah, you are working off the debt that your past lives have done for God knows which God, I don't know. God knows how many years. That's terrible. That's so terrible. So, but that's what they believe, right? And so to get to heaven, or moksha, or liberation in Hinduism, you have to work off and have enough good karma to outweigh the bad karma. And if you don't, you get reincarnated again into something, and you have to kind of do that again and again and again until you eventually get there. Now, they do... I think Krishna was a historical figure too. I wouldn't say that. I don't think he's totally made up. The city of Dwarska, I forgot specifically the name, is right now the biggest evidence that they're using as to say that the Bhagavad Gita is factual. However, I'll give a quick logical way of looking at this. Let's say you write a historical narrative, and you base your historical fiction, and you base your historical fiction in America. Now, 1,000,000 years, no, maybe not 1,000,000, 3,000 years from now, you're like, oh, America was a real place, therefore this book must be real. I don't think that necessarily lines up. The same way that I wouldn't use like, oh, well, Israel was a real place, therefore the Bible is completely true. I wouldn't use that argument for any religion. But that's mainly the argument we're seeing, which is like, hey, the city that he was in was real, therefore. And now he did prophesy. I think it was a prophecy that Krishna said that the city would be underwater, and that's where we discovered it. So that could maybe be evidence. But is that, and this is the question we're going to ask ourselves, is that substantial evidence for his divinity?
Yeah, so I think the issue that I'm running into, because what you're saying is really great, but I feel like a lot of the criticism you have can also be applied to Christianity.
Sure.
There is not a general consensus on what a lot of the Bible means. Would you agree with that?
So now I would agree,
Yeah.
but here's how I'll think about it, and here maybe this might help. So let's throw away all the Bible, but let's keep 4 books, the Gospels, right? So these are eyewitness testimonies and accounts of this one guy. And I agree. It would be very hard to fact check and know precisely every single thing that went on in this Bible, because it's a big book that was written by many authors across
over thousands of years.
Thousands of years, right? But you also can't do that for anything else. And I don't just mean anything else religious-wise, but anything else like with anything else.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, so then the question becomes, okay, so if you can't know for sure, how can we increase the probability that something could be true? And as historians, we are not looking at things to know whether it truly happened or it truly didn't, because we truly can't know. All we can do is get very close to that.
Yeah, well, so that question wasn't in regards to truth. That question was in regards to interpretation.
Yep.
So you had said that like your interpretation is yours, but there's an objective truth to it. That's more what I'm leading towards.
Okay. So you're saying, wait, what's the question?
So how do you get to that objective truth when the Bible has thousands of interpretations? Like
Yes.
like it's not a general consensus on
Yeah.
what most of the Bible means.
So first I would press you on that point. I disagree. I think it's the inverse. I think we have a general consensus on what most of the Bible means, and then there's a few things that we don't know what it means completely. But if you actually have you read through most of the Bible?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. You can agree if you have a decent translation, you could figure out most of what God's trying to say, right? I don't think go read other texts. It's really hard with other religions. So I think you can know for what most of it is. I think there has to be an objective truth, and I'm saying that it's most likely the Bible. I put it that way, because if there isn't an objective truth, it gets really hard to operate our lives.
Very true.
Right? And I always ask the question when I'm testing my atheist friends is like, why should slavery be illegal?
Yeah, and so I understand that, and I agree with you on that. I think my issue arises then, though, of like when you're reading the text and you have this objective truth, you have other versions of Christianity, you have other interpretations of the Bible that are set very different. If you talk to a Lutheran and a Catholic, there's hatred for each other.
Yes, yeah, and that's a good point, right? However, what combines a Lutheran and a Catholic together. Because I got a good buddy. His name's Jacob. Big Catholic, right? Mm-hmm. But we still both agree on the bodily death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That we can't get around. I mean, the first, I forgot, I could be wrong on this. Well, I'm not wrong on this. I might be wrong on exactly what it was. But the first creed, the first like Christian creed, was written by Paul. And that happened even sooner than the first gospel was written. I think it goes like one Father, one God, one Spirit. You know, maybe you know about that one. So even a Catholic and a Lutheran have to agree on something, which is Jesus was a real dude and he really died and then he really rose and then he really went to heaven. If you get away from that, then you're probably not a Christian, which happens. There's a lot of new age spiritual weirdos out there that are like, well, Jesus was actually in us the whole time. That's not, okay, you're not a Christian. You may say you are, but you're not, because that's not what was in the Bible for 2,000 years. Right now you're changing the Bible and creating these weirder versions. That's different. What I would say is, instead of focusing on the Bible specifically, let's think about who was Jesus and what's our historical evidence of that guy. Because this is, I guess, what I think is really important. If you took the Bible and you took out the New Testament, I would say, yeah, like I don't know if I want to believe in this either.
Yeah, it's pretty harsh. Yeah.
I don't even know if it's harsh. I think it's just like, it would be very hard for me to go through all of this and be like, is this really true? Is this really true? Is this really true? However, coming back to the nature of God, where I said, if this guy is God, then he must be true, right? He must be at least saying the right things, because we know that. There's another side tangent of is God not a liar? Okay.
Yeah.
Which let's for the sake of this argument.
No purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's for the sake of this argument say that God is truthful and that he says the truth, right? Let's look at Jesus then, because again, the Bible existed before the Gospels, right? So the Gospels were written as independent accounts of this guy Jesus and what he did. Okay, you take the 4 world religions besides Christianity: Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. These 4 systems cannot work with Jesus. Muslims don't believe that God can have a son, all right? That one's out. If Jesus is right, that one's false, right? Or if Jesus is wrong, that one could be true, right? Hinduism, they believe Jesus could be real, and he totally could be a God, but he can't be the only God, which is what Jesus said. I am the what do you say? I am the only way to the Father. I forgot how the verse specifically. I'm the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father except through me, right? Okay, so there has to be one God. Buddhism, they can't settle on whether there is some God or, is Buddha just a guy. They're pretty agnostic. And then Jews doesn't believe he's the Messiah, which he claimed to be the Messiah. So, and my point is that, and it's in the PowerPoint too, is that if you can reliably believe in Jesus and what he said and did, then the other 4 religions can't work, which means that for the most part, you are getting very close to what could be true. And so then the question becomes, okay, if that's our linchpin, right? If that's how we're looking at things, how do we know if this Jesus guy, A, was real, was who he said he was, and did the things he did, and can we even, trust the people that wrote about him? Then the question becomes, you have to investigate Jesus and know if this guy was right or wrong. Because this is how I think it works out, and maybe I'm wrong, but if you can reliably believe in Jesus and you know him to be God in this eternal Trinity with, the big G, right? Then you can reliably trust everything that came before him as well. And even though you might not know every single part, I don't think that's the point either. To know, we can know Job might be completely true. It could also be just a big poem, right? Ecclesiastes is just wisdom, right? We know that there are parts of the Old Testament that are definitely metaphorical and poetry, but there's also a lot of historical account. I mean, look at Numbers, right? I mean, that thing is like one big logbook. It's pretty crazy. I read through it. It was kind of boring, but it's so interesting. They actually took that. Why, right? Maybe they're not completely wrong, So it goes back to Jesus. If you can prove him to be true, that he really did die and he really did rise, then the rest of it can be for the most part, believed. That's how I would say it.
Yeah, and I totally get that. And I think there's more conceptually. I think there's a lot of with intention. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff that you said that I agree with. But there is that struggle of you're motivated to believe this. You're externally motivated to believe this. Because if you don't, it'll be harder. There are a lot of things where it's like that's hard. Like it's difficult to sacrifice these things to a Buddhist god. Is that really the intention? Is that really what should be avoiding these things?
What do you mean by that?
So like and we don't have a ton of time, so I don't want to go crazy.
You're
into
good.
this, but what I mean by that is you were talking about Buddhism with sacrificing things, and you're like
No, Hinduism.
Hinduism, sorry, and with sacrificing things, and then that's not what it should be. But then you were talking more about like Jesus, and it's much easier to follow Jesus because you have to believe in him to go to heaven.
I disagree. And this is my mom actually said the same exact thing. She said you took the easy way out.
I'm not saying it's the easy way out.
It's not.
I'm saying it's a motivating factor.
I think so. Then why? I didn't know about Jesus at that point, right?
So that's what I'm saying.
Like, aren't those like pretty legit questions that like why are we giving food to this guy who like runs the whole universe?
Those are legitimate questions. I don't know if I liked the phrasing of the conclusion because my viewpoint is the basis of religion should always be on why. Why should I believe this? What is the purpose of believing this? Whether it be for this. And I think that should be the focus of conversation, less about what is the truth of did this happen.
So can I challenge that for a sec?
Why. Yeah.
I challenge that because it's still all about you. And that's the funny thing is even a lot of Christians today do this where they're very focused on like what God will do for me. Buddy, it's what God did for himself. But out of his abundance of love came so much grace that all these amazing things happen for you. If you spend the rest of your life trying to figure out why you need to believe this and believe that, you'll completely miss the whole point. The Bible is it's one big love story, really, between God and his people, and the struggle between his creation, his intent for creation disobeying and going away from him, as we still do today, and what he did to try to bring his creation back to him, through Israel first, and then through Jesus, to reconcile everybody, Jews or Gentile, back to him. Why? For what reason? What purpose? Right? That would be what I would say to investigate, because it's not about you.
No,
it's never been.
Yeah, and that's not the why. The why is why does God want me to believe this? What is the purpose behind it? Is it a purpose for a greater people? Is it a purpose for you? Is it a purpose for him? You know what I mean? Like,
have you come to a conclusion?
Those
on
are
that?
the questions. Yeah.
What did you think?
Generally, the conclusion is to live the best life for yourself and everybody around you. This is the rule book. This is the guidebook to influence the most people in the best way that you can possibly do it. This is the guidebook, which in turn you have to be able to put on your own oxygen mask to save another person, which in turn is going to help you as a person.
Have you ever wondered? And I know we're running out of time here.
Yeah.
Do you want to? Because I don't want to. I know you got your thing.
Yeah. Give it like 2 minutes and then
Okay.
wrap up.
Have you ever wondered if God has no other purpose for wanting you to do these things than just to be with you?
Yeah, and I think that is in line with
right.
what. Yeah.
Because the reason I say that, and this is when you have a greater understanding of sin. Why did God have to kick Adam and Eve out after they bit the apple?
Sorry.
So when Adam and Eve,
No, I understand
they
the
dwelled
story,
with
but
God, walked
yeah,
with God,
yeah.
and then the gate to Eden was closed and they were pushed out of it. Why?
Presumably because, I mean, there's probably a lot of things, but
I don't think there is.
It's probably like an instruction of this is it, this is what happens, and then that's what happens.
Could be.
Yeah.
But let's think about it this way. Let's say these light bulbs, right? As long as there's a light, there can't be darkness, right? Like if there's an empty room, it's completely dark, you have some light in there, it is not completely dark, right? So things like light and dark, or if you want to think about it from a computer term, 0 and 1, they can't coexist at the same time. And let's forget quantum computers for a second.
Sure, yeah.
Right? What that means is that through God's nature and the way he is, right, being all light, all love, he cannot coexist with darkness. It doesn't even happen. That's why Moses couldn't look at him. That's why even the Hindu interpretation of God you can't like actually look at Krishna in his true form without you going crazy because you can't understand it. So because of that, God cannot be near sin and evilness and crookedness because it just can't coexist. If he tries to be near it, it will die. So that's where separation comes. That's why we are separated from him. And through Jesus, through wearing our skin and our flesh, fighting through it, being the perfect sacrifice to reconcile us back to him, he now has his rescue plan basically in motion to bring as many people out of that dark place back to him. Not just because it's the right thing, let's say, but rather because he yearns for a relationship with us. And this was how he had to do it based on what we chose to do in the beginning.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I agree with all what you said, but I don't think it necessarily covers what I'm trying to get at.
Sure.
But I think it's good. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great way to look at it.
Sounds like a part two.
It sounds like a part two
sounds
for
like a
sure.
part two.
It was awesome having you on, Armaan.
Dude,
If there's anything,
great talking.
any plugging last things you want to do real quick before I close this one out.
No. I hate plugs. So
Well, it was great having you on, man. You had said a lot of inspirational stuff, so I'm sure viewers will be able to hear that and really love what you
dude, this was.
so.
I mean, honestly, even outside of this podcast, we should just hang out.
I agree.
Like,
I totally agree.
You'd be like, we don't need to record it.
Amen, dude.
All right, peace out, bro. I
It was awesome
appreciate it.
having you, dude.
Yeah.